The story of Helen Keller. You probably hear the name Helen Keller. She's become a household name for triumph over adversity, and is even featured in contemporary music like song Helen Keller by DJ Khaled. Many people know that Helen Keller has a disability, but they don't necessarily know the details of her story, leading her to stay in the hearts and minds of so many people. It's already a challenge living with a disability, but as you'll see in the section ahead, it's even harder to overcome when you're young and growing up. In her youth, Keller already showed remarkable strength of character in the face of adversity. In this summary, we'll explore her life as a child and adolescent. The life of Helen Keller is one of that will likely motivate and inspire you to achieve what you want to achieve in your life. I get the summary from the book of Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. Helen Keller was both blind and deaf since she was very young. Born in 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama, Helen Keller would grow up to live a life no one thought possible. She was only 19 months old. She was struck with a horrible fever. Before she got sick, Keller had already shown signs of being a fast learner, starting to walk and talk early on. Due to her illness, she lost both her sight and hearing, making it so that she had to learn to communicate in different ways. She relied on basic signals and actions to allow the other people to understand her, such as nodding for yes and shaking her head for no. Keller's mother made a point to make sure that her daughter understood everything she was being asked for, allowing her at the age of 5 to begin partaking in daily activities such as folding and putting away laundry. As you'd probably guess, growing up both deaf and blind can be incredibly frustrating, leading to Keller not being the most well-behaved child. Often, she broke into fits of rage from not being able to express herself clearly, and when something didn't go the way she desired, the consequences were sometimes disastrous. For example, once she threw an apron into the fire because it wasn't drying fast enough, thus setting herself on fire too. Thankfully, she didn't suffer from injuries too horrible. There were other times she acted out too, such as locking her mother in a pantry for 3 hours without letting anyone know where the key was hidden. There was one of many events that led her to her parents realizing she had to be educated. However, it was really difficult to find someone who was qualified to educate a blind and deaf child, but it turns out the right teacher would come along and she would change Keller's life forever. The teacher that changed Helen Keller's life was called Miss Sullivan. The family traveled to Washington to meet inventor Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, and afterwards, Helen and her parents were told to call the Perkins Institution in Boston, a school for the blind. Helen didn't attend the school, but she visited frequently, and Mr. Anagnos, the director of the school, had the goal of finding a teacher who would do the best to benefit her. Miss Sullivan explained to Keller that without love, we wouldn't be able to feel joy and playfulness. Being able to understand what connects us as human beings led to Keller's world growing drastically. Thanks to Miss Sullivan, Keller's was able to learn how to effectively communicate, which freed her from what frustrated feeling which allowed her to achieve everything she did in her life. That teacher was Anne Sullivan. Her and Keller was introduced in 1987, and Sullivan not only taught her words but also taught her the entire concept of language. Miss Sullivan used the method called the manual alphabet, which is based on the idea of using one hand to spell out the word and the other one's palm. Helen's first word using this method was doll. Sullivan instructed her to touch her doll, spell the word with her hands, and repeated the same movements as she perfected it. Even though times weren't always easy, Keller still lived a joyful and wondrous life. During childhood and young adult life, Keller had many valuable experiences and loving friendships, but there were also hard times. When she was 12, she unintentionally plagiarized a book in her homework for the Perkins Institution and was reprimanded for it. A story she wrote for Mr. Agnes, she was believed to have been copied by another story, although Keller did not remember ever being told such a story. Keller was then placed on a quasi-trial at the Perkins Institution, and it was questioned whether or not the plagiarism was intentional. The experience was incredibly saddening and discerning for her. Once she was free from her doubts and worries, Keller's was emboldened to interact with the world, and by age 10, she'd learned to speak. She learned about another deaf and blind girl in Norway, Rand Kata Wood, who could speak, and Keller was determined to do the same, which made her unstoppable. A woman by the name of Sarah Fleer taught Keller to speak by allowing her to touch her face, to feel the shape of her mouth and tongue whenever she spoke. She'd then have Keller repeat the actions. This made her feel incredibly liberated in that she was now able to connect with other people and express herself. Keller didn't want to let her disability affect her enthusiasm for life. And surprisingly, people wondered whether she could truly appreciate things she couldn't see or hear. Specifically, scenic wonders such as Niagara Falls. Keller explained that she could experience them in the same way. We can all appreciate intangible feelings such as love and goodness. Keller had long dreamed of studying at a university, and she finally got the chance to. Keller began her college career in 1990, and although her time there came with its struggles, the rewarding feeling she gained afterwards was everlasting. She began her journey towards college at a prep school called the Cambridge Schools for Young Ladies, where, shockingly, from a modern perspective, she was given almost no special assistance despite her disabilities. German and English literature was her favorite subject during her time in college. She was also proficient in both the French and Greek languages and read many French-Greek books, but her favorite language was German because of its ability to express a story so directly and honestly. Her favorite English book was the Bible, and she loved Shakespeare, particularly Macbeth. Keller's love for literature came the feeling of connectivity. When she read, she was just like everyone else. The key message of Helen Keller's story is that despite of having more to overcome than the average person, Helen Keller fought hard to receive the education she wanted, with the help and support of her teachers and others she met along the way. Keller gained an appreciation for the wonders of life by learning how to maneuver around her many obstacles. As a future teacher, these are the things that I want to do to my students. Make the unrealistic can be realistic. Avoiding danger is impossible. A student must have a vision. She or he must experience what's important for life. Focus on the positive and you'll be happier. Your future is up to you, and surround yourself with positivity. That makes your life more colorful and meaningful.